access. Anyone can access it 24/7 as long as the library website isn't crashed or something. I'm also in the digital depository of other universities. I know that because I leave my trail of manuscripts wherever I am. Well, you go to library catalogs. For example, go to University of Calgary Library Catalog, go to AU Library Catalog, go to University of Toronto, UBC, any of the McGill, Dalhousie. You go to, let's say, the 20 volumes in Canadian history that you know are in digital depositories and that are accessible. You do a study of each of those library catalogs. What you will find is that there is no link to the digital. Well, there is about 20%. 20% of cases a digital link. The others, they have the print copy. The print copy generally says, about this time of the year, signed out. Put a hold and a reserve on it. So have we solved the distribution issue? Have we got the digital open access materials in the libraries? No, not always. It's very spotty. So what does an open access press have to do to be taken, I would say, more than seriously, but actually to get the distribution, to get in the citation index, which is in the end where you want to be? You want your stuff to rank. I mean, we play the ranking game. Well, how do you do it? First of all, you must have your materials in with the e-aggregators. Now, someone has said to me, "Why you do that? Why would they take something that's free?" Because they add value. The aggregators add cataloging records. They add some stability of source. They have a certain look. They offer certain search capacities. Libraries, as I've found, will buy 10,000 titles through an aggregator, or 5,000 titles, or 20,000 titles at a time. You don't acquire a title by title because the cost of cataloging every title and ensuring the links are stable is not going to be possible. There just isn't, at the moment yet, enough people and enough money to do that perpetual harvesting. I know it goes on, but it's not going on to the extent we want. And so that's the real issue is, what is the new business model for open access publishing? What is the new distribution model? How are we going to make certain that we get where the students and the users will find us in appropriate aggregations? How are we going to ensure that the appropriate cataloging records there? How are we going to be ensure that the open access materials are in the OCLC framework? And all of that really ultimately does matter, because people want to be in an open access press because they want to be read. And the other thing is, you can make money if you sell through e-aggregators, simply because you're providing a service to, again, reputable information brokers, which is what I argue the libraries are. The other thing is, what I'm concerned about, quite concerned about actually, is the future of open access publishing and the shading of open access publishing into open educational resources. Because if somebody says, what, and I often ask the question, so what is an OER, an open educational resource? Well, I'd say a book could be one, a textbook could be another, a visual image could be one, a collection of primary materials in a certain situation could be one, a professor's podcast could be an OER. An OER could be anything. In the old days, where would you find OERs other than in the library? You'd probably find a lot of them in the curriculum library, in the fine arts library, in the music library, because sound, visual image, in the film library. Well, that's all gone. Now we have spontaneous creation of OERs. And this is where sometimes people are saying, well, I've created a learning object, and it is subject of intellectual creation. So what's the difference between an open access publication then and an open educational resource? Is the difference one is got an editorial process behind it? Is the difference that one is vetted and the other isn't? Is one a random collection, the other not? I'm just throwing this out for interest. because I think this is something we have to take very, very seriously. To me, the solution is reasonably, and I am naive in this, is reasonably straightforward. What we should do is use tradition as a guide. That is, in the old days, if somebody accumulated, let's say, 500, 600, 700 primary documents, or let's say a mile of documents, and then said, oh, I think that there's about 500 of these are really interesting, so today you say, well, I'll put them up online. Well, in the old days, you would put them in a publication, you would have appropriate footnotes, you'd put an intellectual construct around saying, this is why I selected these and why I didn't select that. So I'm arguing when archives put up major bodies of material, they should put the intellectual frame around it, and that they should have a group of peers, i.e. an editorial board, for lack of a better term, sitting down and saying, yeah, that's intellectually a good way to do it or not do it. To me, that's very important. Same with creating other materials online. How can you ensure quality, like putting lectures online? Well, my advice is get an editorial board, get some peers together, because in the end, where open access in the open movement in its totality will meet its challenges is in what I call the chaos that the information world, and I think it's a good chaos, has become. So again, what frames do you put around it to ensure quality? Anyway, I've gone on, I think, probably long enough, and we want to go on to some questions. I know that at the end of this that we're going to try to get to the Athabasca University Press website, and if any of you have the ability, I really encourage you to go to that website. It's constantly evolving, constantly changing. We're always trying to do things differently, but always within the framework of a peer review environment and assessment. And all I can say is that I personally am extraordinarily proud of Athabasca University Press, what it's achieved in its short life, the recognition it has got, and the leadership it's shown in the open access movement. So I'm all yours, I say to the audience.
Please feel free to click on the microphone in the bottom left corner if you have a question or comment at this time. And if you don't have audio, like I said, you can use the text box.
Longer, and you wouldn't want that.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said there, Dr. Panakuk. And Jean wrote something about copyright issues. Can you expand on that, Jean? Please feel free to click on the microphone. We seem to have a quiet bunch today.
Yeah, copyright is always an issue. The first thing I always say, and I have to be very careful how I say it, the consequences of inadvertent violation of copyright in Canada when it comes to print and in an academic scholarly situation is not serious. Generally, if, for example, you were to do a retrospective collection of journals and you did manage to clear the copyright, generally the worst that happens is somebody will write you a letter and say, I want my article off. Some institutions have done big journal series, in fact maybe 3 or 4 authors in total. In an open access press, what we have done at the at Athabasca University, we have adopted Creative Commons copyright policies. So you want to use our stuff, go for it. If you're going to make money off our stuff, we want a piece of the action. and that's only fair. So for educational